You're not lazy, you're just distracted. 7 Stoic habits that build focus. That's the truth no one wants to admit. How many times have you called yourself unmotivated, weak, or undisciplined, when in reality your energy was simply being stolen piece by the endless noise around you? The buzzing phone, the notifications flashing like alarms, the constant lure of another video, another message, another update. It's not that you lack the will to focus, it's that your will is being sliced apart before it even has a chance to act. Think about how it feels. You sit down to work, your mind sharp for a moment, but within minutes your attention fractures. One distraction leads to another, until hours vanish and you wonder where the day went. You label it laziness, but that's a lie you've been taught. The truth is harsher. You're not in control of your own mind. You've been trained to be scattered. And nothing is more dangerous, because a scattered mind is a wasted life. The Stoics saw this centuries ago, long before smartphones and social feeds. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant threat, yet he warned himself not to scatter his mind on what didn't matter. Seneca, surrounded by the politics of Rome, wrote that it's not that life is short, but that we waste much of it. Epictetus taught his students that freedom comes from mastering the self, not being dragged by every passing impulse. They saw distraction not as harmless, but as theft. To live distracted was, to them, the greatest tragedy, because it meant to live without ever truly living. And here is the hook. What the Stoics feared most is exactly what we are drowning in today. Endless distraction, endless scattering of attention, endless surrender of the present moment. They knew that to waste your focus is to waste your life. You are not lazy, you are under siege. And if you don't learn to defend the gates of your mind, the enemy will always win. So the question is not whether you can focus, it's whether you will choose to reclaim your attention, to practice the habits that turn distraction into discipline. The Stoics left us a map, and if you're willing to follow it, you'll discover what they called the ultimate freedom, a mind that cannot be owned. The reason you feel stuck is not because you lack strength, but because your strength is being drained in 1,000 directions at once. The Stoics understood this long before our age of constant noise. They saw distraction not as an inconvenience, but as the true enemy of a meaningful life. To them, distraction wasn't just losing a moment of attention, it was losing existence itself, traded away piece by piece for things that do not matter. Seneca, in his writings, cut straight to the core. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He wasn't lamenting death, he was warning about distraction. Most of life isn't lost at the end. It's lost day by day, in tiny fragments of wasted focus. A scattered mind, he argued, is the fastest way to waste your one life. And this is where people go wrong today. They confuse distraction with harmless diversion, when in truth, it is the silent assassin of purpose. Marcus Aurelius echoed the same warning. He reminded himself that every time he let his mind drift into triviality, he was surrendering the only thing truly his time, his inner command. For him, distraction was a betrayal of duty because it weakened the one fortress he could not afford to abandon, his mind. And if an emperor surrounded by war, plague, and betrayal understood this, how much more urgent is it for us, who live in an era designed to capture and sell our attention at every moment? This is the diagnosis. You are not lazy, you are leaking. Every notification, every glance at a screen, every mental detour steals fragments of your strength. And by the time you sit down to do the work that matters, you are already hollow. Distraction doesn't just waste time, it robs you of clarity. It corrupts your discipline. It destroys your ability to live with intention. That is why the Stoics treated it as the greatest danger to the soul. So if distraction is the enemy, then what is the cure? Not more guilt, not more self-hatred, but training. The Stoics believed focus could be built, sharpened, and defended like a soldier sharpens his sword. They left us habits, simple yet demanding, that transform scattered energy into unstoppable clarity. And the first of these habits begins where all battles begin, at the gate of the mind. Habit 1. Guard the gate of attention. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." What he meant is simple but brutal. Your mind is your empire, and if you fail to guard it, you will lose everything worth having. For Marcus, distraction was not something to tolerate. It was an invasion. Every careless thought, every pull toward the trivial, was an enemy soldier slipping past the walls. If he did not guard the gate, the empire of his attention would collapse. Think about this in your own life. Each time you wake and immediately reach for your phone, you've already surrendered the gate. Before your mind has a chance to set its own course, it is being led into someone else's battle. News headlines, messages, social media. You've given the keys of your empire away before sunrise. That's not laziness, that's occupation. And no soldier, no emperor, no philosopher worth his breath would willingly allow his fortress to be breached in the first hour of the day. The Stoics trained themselves to resist this. They understood that attention is not infinite. It is currency, and once spent, it cannot be reclaimed. Their practice was to direct it with intention, not to scatter it across whatever noise arrived first. Marcus wrote reminders to himself each morning, warnings against vanity, against anger, against wasting time on things that did not belong to him. He was building a wall, stone by stone, to protect the clarity of his mind. For you, guarding the gate begins with a choice. Do not allow your first thoughts of the day to be dictated by a glowing screen. Begin with silence. Begin with breath. Begin with a reminder written by your own hand, not by an algorithm. Even 30 minutes in the morning without your phone will feel like reclaiming a piece of land that you thought was lost forever. It will feel like standing watch at the gate, refusing entry to thieves who come disguised as harmless distractions. This habit is not just about mornings, it is about every moment. Before you say yes, before you click, before you allow something into your mental space, ask, does this deserve entry? Does this strengthen my mind, or does it scatter it? If the answer is the latter, the gate stays shut. This is how focus is built, not by willpower alone, but by discipline, in choosing what is allowed in and what is not. The world will always knock at your door with noise. The question is whether you will answer, or whether you will learn to guard your empire like Marcus did, fiercely, intentionally, without apology. Because the mind that cannot guard its gate is already conquered. Habit 2. Morning clarity ritual. The way you begin the day decides the shape of the day. Most people surrender their mornings before they've even stood up. They wake, grab their phone, and let the flood of noise rush in. Emails, headlines, messages, endless distractions. Before the mind has a chance to breathe, it is already reacting, already pulled in a dozen directions. No wonder the day feels scattered. The Stoics would call this a failure of command. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings differently. He wrote to himself, not to others. He reminded himself of what he would face, difficult people, hardship, temptation, and he prepared his mind for it. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, wasn't pessimism, it was armor. By imagining the obstacles of the day, Marcus stripped them of their power. Nothing could surprise him because he had already rehearsed his response. This is a morning ritual of clarity, not complaint. The habit for you is simple. Before you open the gates of your attention to the world, claim the first hour for yourself. Write down 3 intentions. Not a to-do list, not endless goals. Just 3 clear priorities. Decide who you will be before the world decides for you. If you expect interruptions, name them. If you expect temptation, acknowledge it. By naming these things in the morning, you disarm them before they arrive. This practice transforms the day because it shifts you from reaction to preparation. Most people stumble into the world unarmed, hoping to endure whatever comes. The Stoic prepares, and in preparation finds strength. The mind, anchored in intention, cannot be dragged as easily into distraction. The person who begins with clarity does not waste energy on the trivial. Think of your morning as the foundation of your empire. If it is weak, everything built upon it will crumble. But if it is strong, quiet, deliberate, intentional, then the storms of the day will not shake you. 30 minutes of silence, 3 lines on paper, 1 steady breath repeated until the mind clears. That is not wasted time. That is command. Marcus faced wars, betrayals, and plagues, and still he began his mornings with reminders of who he wanted to be. Your struggles may be smaller, but the principle is the same. Claim your mornings, and you claim your mind, and when you own your mornings, you own your days. Habit 3. Voluntary discomfort. Comfort is seductive. It lulls the mind into weakness, convinces you that every urge must be satisfied, every craving indulged, every distraction followed. The Stoics saw comfort for what it truly was, a trap. Seneca warned that indulgence makes us soft, that luxury erodes discipline. Epictetus, who had once been a slave, taught his students to practice denial, to refuse pleasures not because pleasure is evil, but because mastery over oneself demands it. To be ruled by comfort is to be ruled by something outside yourself. Voluntary discomfort is the Stoic weapon against this trap. It is the deliberate choice to step into difficulty, to train the mind to focus even when the body protests. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the body may grow tired, but the mind can remain steady. When he marched with his soldiers, he endured the same cold, the same hunger, the same fatigue. His philosophy was not written in marble halls alone. It was carved into his bones on freezing mornings, in aching muscles, in the silence of discipline. For you, the habit begins with small acts of chosen difficulty. Take a cold shower. Leave your phone in another room and sit with silence. Fast for a few hours longer than you're used to. Work without music, without noise, without the constant need to be entertained. These are not punishments. They are reminders that you control your attention, not your cravings. If you can resist the pull of comfort, you can resist the pull of distraction. Why does this matter? Because focus is not built in ease. It is built in resistance. If you train only in comfort, the smallest hardship will break you. But if you train in chosen discomfort, the world's distractions lose their grip. You learn to say no. You learn to sit still. You learn that an impulse does not own you unless you let it. This is what Epictetus meant when he taught his students to challenge their impressions. Every impulse, check your phone, scroll, indulge, escape, is just an impression. You can question it, you can resist it, and every time you do, you strengthen the muscle of focus. So practice voluntary discomfort, not to suffer needlessly, but to prove to yourself that you are free. Because if you cannot resist your phone, you cannot resist your own weakness. But if you can train yourself to endure discomfort by choice, distraction loses its power. And what remains is clarity, discipline, and the unshakable knowledge that your mind belongs to you. Habit 4. The discipline of single tasking. Seneca once warned against scattering oneself across too many pursuits, saying that those who are everywhere are nowhere. A distracted life is not a full life, it is a fractured one. The Stoics prized presence, the ability to give one's full attention to the moment, to the task, to the person in front of them. In our time, the word for this is single tasking, and it is far rarer than it should be. Look at the way most people live today. Multiple tabs open, half-finished conversations, phones buzzing beside them, thoughts darting from one unfinished thing to another. This is not productivity, it is chaos disguised as effort. You feel busy, but you accomplish nothing of weight. The Stoics knew that this was a recipe for exhaustion and emptiness. Focus split is focus lost. Single tasking is not about doing less, it is about doing with depth. When you are fully present in one action, the quality of that action multiplies. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to do what was in front of him with precision and integrity, not with scattered half-attention. For him, each duty of the day was not something to rush through, but something to embody fully, with mind and spirit engaged. In practice, this means training yourself to resist the false promise of multitasking. Close the extra tabs. Put the phone out of reach. When you write, only write. When you listen, only listen. When you work, only work. The world will try to convince you that juggling 10 things at once is mastery. The Stoics would say it is slavery, to distraction, to restlessness, to the fear of missing out. Treat each task as a meditation. Pour yourself into it, not because the task itself is grand, but because presence itself is grand. Folding clothes, answering an email, studying, creating, each is an opportunity to practice command of your attention. And this command is what builds resilience, clarity, and peace. Imagine how much of your life you've lost to partial presence. Half listening to someone you love while scrolling, half working while your mind drifts, half living because your attention is always somewhere else. The Stoic discipline of single tasking cuts through this fog. It demands that you show up fully, here, now, without scattering yourself. This habit is not glamorous, but it is transformative, because the person who can give undivided attention to the smallest task is also the person who can face the largest challenges without crumbling. Focus is built in these small acts of presence, and when you learn to master one thing at a time, you reclaim the strength of a mind that no distraction can fracture. Habit 5. Journaling. Marcus Aurelius never sat down to write a book. He sat down to save his mind. Meditations was not a performance, not a speech, not a legacy project. It was a journal of survival, private reminders, written to himself in the middle of war, plague, betrayal, and relentless pressure. And in those lines, we see one of the most powerful Stoic habits for building focus: journaling as mental training. Journaling, to the Stoics, was not about eloquence. It was not about filling a page with polished words. It was about clarity. Marcus wrote to remind himself of what mattered, to cut away what did not, to return again and again to the core truths he could not afford to forget. He fought distraction with his pen, stripping away illusions until only focus remained. For you, this habit can be just as sharp. Each morning or evening, take the time to write, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Ask the questions Marcus asked in his own way. What am I wasting time on today? What deserves my attention? What fears are stealing my clarity? When you force your thoughts into words, you expose the shadows for what they are. Vague anxieties become sentences, and sentences can be challenged, corrected, refocused. Do not confuse this with therapy. This is training. Just as the body grows stronger with repetition, the mind grows sharper with the repeated act of self-examination. A few honest lines a day will do more for your focus than hours of scattered thought, because writing forces you to slow down, to choose words, to confront what is really happening inside. Journaling in this Stoic sense is not about keeping a diary of events. It is about building a fortress of reminders. Each page is a wall that protects your attention, a tool you return to when the world tries to scatter you again. It is not the act of recording life, but the act of directing it. And here's the truth. Your focus will not survive on its own. It must be trained, defended, renewed daily. Marcus knew this, which is why he returned to his journal again and again, even as Emperor of Rome. If he needed it, so do you. Begin with one line. Today I will not waste myself on noise. Write it, believe it, and return to it when distraction knocks. Over time, those lines become your compass, pulling you back to clarity every time the world tries to drag you away. Habit 6. Negative visualization for focus. The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first glance it looks grim, even pessimistic, but in truth it was one of their sharpest tools for clarity. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they all trained themselves to imagine loss, failure, and hardship, not to depress the mind but to focus it. By facing what could be taken away, they learned to value what was in front of them and to give their full attention to what mattered now. Seneca once wrote, "He robs present ills of their power, who has perceived their coming beforehand." This was not about paranoia, it was about refusing to be blindsided by life. When you imagine loss, you strip fear of its sting. But there is another dimension here. When you imagine losing your time to distraction, you begin to see every wasted hour for what it is, a death of possibility. Think of it this way. Before you begin your day, imagine the cost of drifting through it unfocused. Imagine yourself at night, realizing the hours slipped away into noise, scrolling, meaningless activity. Feel that disappointment before it happens. Now flip it. Imagine ending the day with your work complete, your time well used, your mind steady. Which life will you choose? The act of visualization sharpens the stakes and forces you into clarity. This is not abstract. You can practice it every day. Before you start a task, pause and ask, what happens if I waste this time? What opportunities will vanish? What regret will I feel? Then ask, what strength will I build if I give myself fully to it? This simple practice transforms focus from a vague idea into a survival instinct. The Stoics turned fear into fuel. They saw that by rehearsing the worst, they could live better in the present. When Marcus reminded himself of death, it wasn't to despair, it was to cut away distraction. When Seneca warned about wasted time, it wasn't to scold. It was to remind us that attention is life itself. So practice negative visualization not as a dark meditation, but as a sharpening blade. Imagine the loss of your time, your focus, your purpose, and let that vision ignite urgency. Every hour is slipping and every distraction is a thief. But when you see the theft before it happens, you can stop it. And when you stop it, you reclaim the power to live this day fully, without apology. Habit 7. The evening audit. The day ends and most people collapse into distraction again. Television, scrolling, noise to drown out the silence. The Stoics, however, treated the evening as a weapon. They turned it into a moment of command, a practice of reflection that sharpened the mind for tomorrow. Epictetus advised his students to examine their actions every night. When the light has been taken away and you are about to sleep, do not suffer your eyes to close before you have examined your whole day. This was not ritual, it was training. The evening audit is simple but unforgiving. Ask yourself, what stole my attention today? Where did I scatter my energy? Did I live as I intended, or did I surrender to distraction? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to make you conscious. Awareness is the first step toward mastery, and most people live blind, repeating mistakes because they never stop to face them. The Stoic refuses to end the day in ignorance. Marcus Aurelius did the same in his writings. Again and again he reminded himself of his failures, his anger, his wasted time. Not to wallow in guilt, but to anchor his resolve for tomorrow. He treated every mistake as a chance to return to discipline. He knew that a wasted day is only truly wasted if it is not examined. Reflection was his way of reclaiming clarity even when he faltered. For you, the evening audit can be as small as 3 lines. What distracted me today? What strengthened me? What will I change tomorrow? Don't turn it into a performance. Don't write to impress. Write to see. Write to confront. This simple act pulls your mind back from drifting and forces it to look in the mirror. Distraction thrives in unexamined lives. It repeats itself because it hides in the shadows. The evening audit drags it into the light, where you can face it, name it, and break its hold. Over time, this habit creates awareness so sharp that distraction no longer slips past unnoticed. You begin to see the patterns, and seeing them is the beginning of breaking them. The Stoics ended their days with reflection because they knew that mastery is not built in a single morning, but in the repeated cycle of preparation, practice, and review. Your focus is not a one-time victory. It is a discipline carved deeper each night. You take the time to examine yourself. And when you train in this way, even your failures become fuel for clarity. Picture Marcus Aurelius at the end of another brutal day. The empire still demands, soldiers still march, and enemies still plot. Yet as the candle burns low, he takes up his pen one last time. His body is tired, but his mind remains his own. This is the victory the Stoics sought, not conquest of land or fortune, but conquest of self, because the man who governs his attention governs his life. The Stoics knew that the greatest danger is not chains on the body, but chains on the mind. Distraction is one of those chains. It does not imprison with walls, but with constant noise, with scattered energy, with the slow erosion of purpose. To escape it is to taste freedom. And that freedom cannot be given by power, wealth, or chance. It must be built, habit by habit, through discipline, reflection, and practice. The victory is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the act of choosing presence when the world screams for your attention. It is the discipline of writing when your mind wants to drift. It is the restraint of saying no when every impulse urges yes. It is the courage to sit with discomfort, to guard the gate, to live by intention rather than reaction. These small acts repeated forge an unshakable mind. When Marcus said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he was not offering comfort. He was issuing a command. The storms of life will not stop. The noise will not stop. The distractions will not stop. But you can stop surrendering to them. You can become the kind of person who is no longer owned by the chaos around them. That is Stoic victory, to live free, because you have mastered yourself. So here is the echo for you. If you don't own your attention, someone else will. If you don't guard the empire of your mind, it will be conquered. But if you do, if you train, if you build, if you live as the Stoics did, you will hold something no one can steal. A mind that cannot be bought, broken, or distracted away. A mind that is yours, steady, clear, and strong. You've seen the truth. You are not lazy, you're distracted. And you've seen the way out. The Stoic habits that sharpen attention and build clarity, one disciplined choice at a time. But knowing is not enough. The Stoics would say, philosophy is nothing unless lived. You have to step into it now before distraction pulls you back into the tide. So here is your first challenge. Tonight, before you sleep, write one line, just one. A reminder to yourself, in your own words, of what deserves your focus tomorrow. Guard that line as if it were an order from a general. When you wake, follow it. Do not surrender your morning to noise. Do not let the gate fall. Practice the discipline you've just learned, not someday, but today. If this voice of resilience speaks to you, stay with it. Subscribe and let these Stoic reminders walk with you daily. Every video is another shield, another weapon against distraction, another lesson to sharpen your mind. Because you cannot win this battle alone. You need training, you need reminders, you need a community that chooses clarity over chaos. And when this video ends, don't drift into the next distraction. Watch the next lesson I've left for you. It will show you how the Stoics turned pressure into strength and silence into wisdom. Begin now, because distraction will not wait, and neither should you.